The arena goes absolutely silent. 79 feet. That's not basketball anymore. That's physics defying itself in real time. That's something nobody prepared for because nobody thought it was possible. But Caitlin Clark doesn't see distance the way other players do. What should be impossible becomes inevitable the moment the ball leaves her fingertips. The crowd doesn't even have time to process what they're watching before the net ripples. The eruption happens before the ball even hits leather. Within minutes, the clip is everywhere. Social media explodes. Basketball analysts are running the footage back over and over trying to understand what they just witnessed. Former NBA players are tweeting about it. International basketball communities are sharing it. The clip gets millions of views in hours. Caitlin Clark's name trends worldwide. And suddenly, everyone who thought they understood what women's basketball could be has to reconsider everything. But here's what makes this moment even more significant than just the shot itself. It's the culmination of something that's been building all season long. This wasn't a fluke. This wasn't a lucky bounce from a player who doesn't belong at this level. This was an exhibition of pure skill from someone who has been preparing for this exact moment her entire life. The 79-footer becomes the symbol of something much bigger, a complete revolution in how basketball is being played. What's fascinating is the reaction it creates. Coaches start studying her tape. Defensive coordinators are scrambling to figure out how to guard someone whose range has essentially eliminated the concept of a safe distance on the court. Other players are watching and realizing that the game they thought they understood has just evolved into something new. The traditional three-point line, which was supposed to be the ultimate deep range, suddenly feels like an arbitrary rule that doesn't apply to Clark. The moment also reveals something psychological about Clark that becomes increasingly obvious as you study her game. She doesn't shoot the deep three-pointers because she's desperate or because it's a low-percentage play. She shoots them because she genuinely believes they're going in, and that belief is contagious. Her teammates feed off it. The crowd feeds off it. Even opponents seem affected by it. Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement. When you're playing defense against someone who legitimately might shoot from 79 feet, it fundamentally changes how you approach the game. Every possession becomes mentally exhausting because the threat exists everywhere on the court. There's no safe positioning. There's no comfortable distance from which you can relax defensively. What's really interesting is how this shot crystallizes the conversation around her entire playing style. For weeks, people have been wondering if she's sustainable at the professional level. Questions linger about whether her range will hold up against elite-level spacing and defensive intensity. Skeptics wonder if this is a novelty that will eventually be figured out. But then she hits a 79-foot buzzer beater, and suddenly all those doubts feel premature. This isn't luck. This isn't a hot streak. This is someone operating at a different level. The internet didn't just go crazy because of the distance. It went crazy because the moment represented a shift in what's possible. It was the ultimate statement. Clark wasn't just playing basketball, she was redefining it. And everyone watching knew they were witnessing something that would be remembered for years to come. The commentators barely got the words out before the arena erupted. You could hear the confusion first, that split-second pause where even the professionals didn't quite understand what they'd just seen. Then came the realization. Then came the explosion. The crowd noise was deafening, but what made it even more remarkable was the confidence radiating from Clark's body language after the shot went in. She didn't celebrate wildly. She didn't look shocked. She looked like she'd just done exactly what she intended to do. That's the kind of composure that separates transcendent players from everyone else. She took a breath, launched from a distance that shouldn't be possible, and calmly walked back down the court like she'd just hit a mid-range jumper. The ripple effects of that single shot extended far beyond the arena. Media outlets that don't typically cover women's basketball suddenly ran segments about it. Sports documentarians started researching Clark's background. Casual fans who'd never watched a full women's basketball game found themselves watching full games just to understand how someone could possibly be this good. The clip became a cultural moment, something that transcended basketball entirely. It became evidence of a shift happening in how women's athletics are perceived and discussed. One shot, 79 feet, a clock running down, a moment of perfect execution under impossible pressure. and everything changed. The 79-footer will live in basketball history alongside the greatest shots ever made. It joins the pantheon of moments that defined eras and players. But what makes this moment truly significant is that it's not an outlier in Clark's career. It's not an anomaly. It's the logical conclusion of a season-long evolution. She's been building toward this. She's been preparing for this. Every practice, every game, every shot attempted and made has led to this singular moment where she launched from an impossible distance and delivered exactly what everyone in the arena hoped would happen. The shot is iconic, but the context is what makes it legendary. When Caitlin Clark was drafted by the Indiana Fever, the excitement was real, but so were the doubts. Women's basketball had seen talented rookies before. The league had experienced phenomenal young players. But there was something different about Clark from day one, something that made longtime observers uncomfortable because it didn't fit the traditional mold of what a women's basketball star was supposed to look like. Her college career had been unprecedented. She broke records. She won games single-handedly. She took Iowa to levels the program had never reached before. Stadiums filled up to watch her play. Television ratings surged. She became a household name in a way that very few college basketball players ever do. But here's the thing that professional scouts and analysts were quietly wondering as draft day approached. Would any of that translate? College basketball and professional basketball are completely different animals. The spacing is tighter. The athleticism is higher. The defensive intensity is relentless. The game moves faster. Every player on the floor has been a star at some level. Every team has multiple threats that can create scoring opportunities independently. Young players who dominate at the college level often struggle to adjust to the professional game. The transition has humbled countless talented rookies before. Players who seemed unstoppable in college suddenly find themselves struggling to get open looks. Defenders who were overpowered by college athletes move with a speed and fluidity that forces younger players to completely rethink their approach. The adjustment period can take months or even years for some players. Reports suggest that even some within the basketball community had reservations about whether Clark's playing style would work at the professional level. Her shooting range, which was her greatest strength in college, was seen by some as potentially overrated. The thinking was that professional defenders would close out faster, that the three-point line would be contested differently, that she wouldn't have the same freedom she enjoyed in the college game. These weren't unreasonable concerns. History provides plenty of examples of college stars whose greatest strengths became less effective at the next level. Skeptics pointed to other high-volume shooters who had struggled in their first professional seasons. The assumption was that Clark would need to adjust, adapt, and probably take a year or two to find her rhythm. Maybe she'd eventually become a very good professional player. Maybe she'd become all-star caliber. But nobody thought she'd arrive and immediately dominate the way she has. But from her very first game, it became clear that the doubts were misplaced. Clark didn't need an adjustment period. She didn't struggle with the transition. Instead, she walked onto the professional court and immediately showed that her college success wasn't a product of her competition level. It was a product of genuine, elite-level skill. The moment she stepped onto the floor, defenders realized they had a completely different problem on their hands than they anticipated. What made her rise particularly striking was how quickly she commanded respect. Usually, rookies need time to prove themselves. They need to show consistency over multiple games, multiple weeks. Sometimes it takes an entire season for a young player to earn the respect of veteran defenders and coaches. Clark needed about 1 quarter. From her very first possession, she was operating with complete confidence. She was pushing pace. She was hunting shots. She was making plays. And most importantly, she was making them look easy. When defenders gave her space because they were worried about her three-point range, she'd drive and create off the dribble. When they pressed up on her trying to contest her shots, she'd use her handles to navigate the pressure and find open teammates. There was no defensive adjustment that worked against her because every adjustment created a different problem. The narrative started to shift immediately. Suddenly, the question wasn't whether she could hang at the professional level. The question became how good could she actually become? Comparisons started emerging to legendary players. People were talking about Steph Curry, about Larry Bird, about the greatest shooters in basketball history. And while those comparisons might seem extreme for a rookie, they started to feel less ridiculous the more you watched her play. What's particularly interesting is how she handled the pressure of those expectations. There's a weight that comes with being hyped the way Clark was hyped. There's a target on your back. Opposing teams specifically prepare game plans to stop you. But instead of buckling under that pressure, Clark seemed to thrive under it. The brighter the spotlight, the better she played. To understand what makes Caitlin Clark fundamentally different from other elite shooters in basketball, you have to understand her shooting range. This isn't about hitting threes. Every professional basketball player can hit threes. This is about what happens when someone's three-point range extends so far beyond what's considered normal that it breaks the entire defensive framework of the game. The traditional three-point line exists at a specific distance because it was designed to create balance in basketball. Shoot from close range and you get 2 points. Shoot from behind the line and you get 3. It's a system that's worked for decades because it creates a natural risk-reward calculation. Teams have to make decisions about how much they want to pressure shooters beyond the three-point line because if they overextend, they give up easier scoring opportunities closer to the basket. Clark obliterates this calculation completely. Her effective three-point range doesn't stop at the line. It extends 5, 10, 15 feet beyond it. And because she's making these shots with consistency, she's forcing defenders to account for range that has never been systematically accounted for before in women's basketball. The math of the game changes when one player can score from distances where the expected value of a possession has traditionally been negative. When she dribbles up the court, defenders can't just worry about her pulling up at the three-point line. They have to worry about her shooting from half court. They have to worry about her shooting from distances that seem absurd until you watch her make them repeatedly. What's fascinating from a defensive standpoint is the impossible position this creates. If you play her tight to try to contest shots, she has the handles and athleticism to drive past you and create scoring opportunities closer to the basket. She's not just a shooter. She's a complete basketball player with multiple scoring options. If you back off and give her space, she confidently launches from 25, 30, 35 feet out. There's no sweet spot for defenders because she's essentially eliminated the concept of a safe distance on the court. Every inch of the floor within her range is a potential scoring opportunity. Every positioning choice a defender makes creates a vulnerability somewhere else. The comparisons to Steph Curry become relevant here, but they also miss something important. Curry revolutionized basketball by extending the three-point range and making deep threes a consistent offensive weapon. But even Curry, as great as he is, operates within certain parameters. There are distances where even he becomes uncomfortable. There are ranges where the percentage drops enough that teams can live with it. The statistical data exists showing Curry's shooting percentages at various distances. Teams adjust their defensive schemes knowing that beyond a certain distance, even the greatest shooter in basketball history becomes slightly less reliable. Clark seems to have fewer of those thresholds. Her confidence extends to distances that seem to defy probability. She's operating in a space where the traditional shooting percentages that define effective offense don't quite apply. What's particularly striking is how she's arrived at this skill. Reports suggest that she spent years working specifically on her shooting from extreme distances. This isn't accidental. This isn't something that happened naturally because she's talented. This is the result of deliberate practice, thousands of repetitions, and a commitment to mastering something that most players never even attempt at a professional level. She's trained her body to shoot from ranges that most coaches would discourage. She spent countless hours in the gym perfecting the mechanical consistency required to make these shots at high volume. She's made it work at the highest level of competition, and that's not luck. The impact on the game is immediate and measurable. When Clark is on the floor, opposing teams have to adjust their entire defensive scheme. They can't play traditional pick and roll defense because the spacing requirements change completely. They can't use zone defenses effectively because those defenses are built on the assumption that players will shoot from certain ranges. They can't use help side defense because helping would leave her open from distances where she can score 3 points from seemingly anywhere. The traditional basketball architecture falls apart when one player has this kind of range. What's really interesting is watching how this forces other players to play differently too. Her teammates suddenly have more space because defenders are so worried about Clark's range that they have to overextend to contest her. When she drives to the basket, Help defense comes more slowly because teams are terrified of leaving her open for a deep three. She essentially creates offensive opportunities for everyone around her simply by existing on the court and forcing defenses to operate in unfamiliar territory. The range that Clark has developed isn't just a skill. Strategic advantage that changes how basketball is played at the highest level. Here's what separates good scorers from great players: the ability to make everyone around you better. Caitlin Clark could have been just a shooter. She could have developed her range, come into the league, and spent her entire career taking contested threes from ridiculous distances. That would have been impressive enough. The scoring numbers alone would make her an all-star caliber player. She'd be valuable. She'd be effective. She'd be successful. But that's not what she does. Because underneath all the deep shooting and all the highlight moments, Clark is a basketball player first, and that distinction matters enormously. Her playmaking is what elevates her from really good scorer to transformational player. And what's interesting is that her playmaking doesn't operate the way most elite playmakers operate. When you think of great passers in basketball, Steve Nash, John Stockton, LeBron James, you think of players who methodically move the ball around, creating opportunities through ball movement and spacing. They run sets. They execute plays. They create rhythm offenses where everyone touches the ball and everyone feels involved. Clark does that. She's capable of running an offense. She understands spacing and positioning. She can facilitate in traditional ways, but she also does something different. She uses her scoring gravity to create playmaking opportunities. Because defenders are so focused on stopping her from shooting, they overcommit to her defensively. And when they overcommit, lanes open up. Space develops. Teammates become available for easy baskets. The no-look passes that have become her signature aren't flashy for the sake of being flashy. They're the natural result of defenders being so focused on her that they don't notice her setting up her teammates. She's weaponizing defensive attention and converting it into assists. What's particularly remarkable is her court vision. When she's driving to the basket and defenders collapse around her, she has the vision to find teammates in positions where they're completely open. She sees angles that other players don't see. She understands spacing at a level that you'd expect from a veteran point guard, not a rookie. And because she's a threat from anywhere on the court, the passes she makes are worth more than they might seem. She's setting teammates up for easy baskets because defenders had to leave them to go stop her. The assists she records undervalue the playmaking impact she has because some of her best passes result in open shooters that other teammates finish. Reports from teammates suggest that playing alongside Clark changes how you think about basketball. Suddenly, you're getting open looks you might not normally get. Suddenly, you're getting the ball in better positions because she has the vision to find you. She's the kind of player who makes everyone around her feel like they're better than they actually are. Not because she's forcing them the ball or because she's running specific plays designed to get them easy baskets, but because her presence on the court creates better opportunities for everyone. When you're playing next to someone who can shoot from 79 feet and also has the vision to find you cutting to the basket, your job becomes easier. What's fascinating is watching her read defenses in real time. She'll come off a screen, and instead of immediately shooting, she'll recognize that help defense has committed to her. She'll see the open teammate. She'll deliver the pass with perfect touch and timing. And then the next possession, when defenses adjust to account for her playmaking, she'll immediately attack and score. She's operating one step ahead of the defense at all times, which is the hallmark of a truly elite basketball player. She's not just reacting to what the defense does. She's anticipating what they're about to do and making decisions based on that anticipation. The combination of scoring and playmaking makes her nearly impossible to defend. Because you can't just stop her from shooting, you have to worry about her passing. You can't double team her. You'll create open threes for her teammates. You can't play her tight. She'll drive and create even more opportunities. She's essentially turned basketball into a choose-your-own-adventure game where every defensive choice creates a different problem. Whatever you decide to do defensively, she has an answer ready. What makes this particularly special is that she's doing this at 22 years old. She has years of development ahead of her. She's already operating at an elite level in both scoring and playmaking. As she continues to grow and understand the game at deeper levels, the possibility exists that she could become even more effective as a facilitator. The scary thing for opposing teams is that Clark hasn't even reached her ceiling yet. She's already transformational. She's already making everyone around her better. But the version of her that we'll see in 3 years, in 5 years, could be something completely different and completely unstoppable. There's a fundamental difference between playing well when everything is flowing and playing well when everything is on the line. Statistics become meaningless. The crowd noise becomes deafening. Every possession feels like it matters infinitely more than it actually does. This is where championships are won or lost. This is where legends are made or unmade. And this is where Caitlin Clark does something truly exceptional. When the game is close and the pressure is at its highest, Clark doesn't shrink. She gravitates toward the moment. She wants the ball. She wants the responsibility. And more importantly, she delivers. There's a psychological component to this that's difficult to quantify, but impossible to ignore when you watch her play. Some players play tighter in pressure situations. Their mechanics change. Their decision-making becomes more conservative. Their confidence wavers. They start overthinking instead of trusting their abilities. Clark does the opposite. The higher the pressure, the more controlled she becomes. The bigger the moment, the more confident she looks. Watch what happens late in close games. Opposing defenses are tight. Everyone in the arena knows that Clark is going to try to take over the game. The defense specifically game plans for her. They throw multiple defenders at her. They attempt to limit her touches. And then she makes a move that completely changes the momentum. It's not always a three-pointer. Sometimes it's a perfectly timed drive. Sometimes it's a no-look pass that swings the game in the other direction. But there's a consistency to how she performs when the stakes are highest. What's interesting from a psychological standpoint is that Clark seems to thrive on pressure rather than being burdened by it. Sports psychologists often talk about the concept of flow state, that perfect zone where an athlete is completely locked in and performing at their absolute best. It's the place where everything feels effortless, where time seems to slow down, where decisions happen on instinct rather than conscious thought. Clark seems to access flow state more readily in pressure situations than in blowouts. When the game is decided, she plays well. When the game is on the line, she plays exceptionally. The confidence never wavers. You can see it in her body language. You can see it in how she approaches the ball. You can see it in her eyes when she's looking at defenders. There's no hesitation. There's no self-doubt. There's just certainty that whatever she's about to do is going to work out. And because she carries that confidence so visibly, it affects her teammates. It affects the opposing team. It affects the entire energy of the arena. When you're playing with someone who genuinely believes they're going to hit the big shot, your confidence rises too. Your play improves because you're feeding off that energy. When you're playing against someone who has that kind of composure and certainty, doubt starts creeping in. You start wondering if they're really going to hit it. And that doubt translates into slightly less intense defense, slightly less aggressive positioning, slight hesitation at crucial moments. Reports from coaches suggest that this kind of pressure performance is something you can't teach. You either have it or you don't. Some players are born with the ability to compartmentalize pressure and perform anyway. Others struggle with it their entire careers. Clark appears to be in the first category. She's wired differently than most players when it comes to high-stakes situations. What makes her pressure performances even more impressive is the level of defensive intensity she faces. Teams game plan specifically to stop her in crucial moments. They know she's a threat. They know she can take over, so they commit extra resources to her. They send double teams. They press up on her tighter. They use physical defense trying to disrupt her rhythm. And despite all that attention, she still finds ways to impact the game. She still finds open teammates. She still creates scoring opportunities. She still performs. There's also something interesting about how she manages the emotional roller coaster of professional sports. Professional basketball is a game of runs. One moment you're down 5, the next you're up 3. Momentum shifts constantly. Teams build leads and lose them. Players hit consecutive shots and then miss consecutive shots. Most players get caught up in these swings. Their confidence builds and crashes based on recent results. Clark seems immune to that. Whether she just hit 3 threes in a row or just missed 3 threes in a row, her approach to the next possession is identical. There's a baseline confidence that doesn't fluctuate. The pressure performances also reveal something about her maturity as a player. She's only 22 years old, but she plays with the composure of a veteran. She doesn't panic. She doesn't force shots in pressure situations. She makes intelligent decisions. She takes what the defense gives her, and when they overcommit to stopping her, she punishes them. That's the mark of someone who has exceptional basketball intelligence combined with exceptional pressure performance ability. It's rare. It's valuable. It's what separates good players from great ones. No story about an elite athlete is complete without acknowledging the complications that come with stardom and the physical demands of professional sports. Caitlin Clark's rise has been meteoric, but it hasn't been without its share of complications and concerns that observers have started to whisper about. Understanding these elements is crucial to understanding the full picture of who she is and what her future might look like. First, there's the question of intensity and how it manifests on the court. Clark plays with an aggressive edge that sometimes crosses into controversial territory. Reports indicate that she's accumulated technical fouls at a rate that suggests her competitive fire occasionally gets the better of her on-court interactions. Some of these technicals have been for arguing calls. Others have been for general demeanor. There's been a physical edge to some of her interactions with referees that has drawn attention from league officials. What's interesting is that these technicals don't seem to affect her performance. If anything, they suggest someone who cares deeply about winning and isn't willing to accept what she perceives as injustice. She's not getting technical fouls because she's frustrated about her own performance. She's getting them because she's fighting for every possession and every call. But there's a legitimate question worth asking. As she continues her professional career, will this intensity become a problem? Will opposing teams start to use her competitive nature against her, trying to provoke technicals that could swing games? Will the physical and mental toll of playing with such high intensity eventually lead to problems off the court? These are speculations, but they're the kind of speculations that analysts and coaches are quietly discussing in private conversations. Then, there's the injury question, which is far more serious and legitimate. Reports emerged about a right knee injury that surfaced during preseason play. The evaluation initially suggested a 2-week recovery timeline, but injuries in basketball are unpredictable. One player's 2-week injury might turn into a 3-week injury or longer, depending on how the healing progresses. Another player might recover exactly on schedule. The concern isn't necessarily about this specific injury, though any injury to a young player is worth monitoring. Medical professionals know that younger athletes typically recover faster than older athletes. Their bodies heal more efficiently, but the concern is about durability over a long career. Clark's playing style, while incredibly effective, is also physically demanding. She's constantly attacking the basket. She's making sudden directional changes at high speeds. She's exploding into jump shots from extreme distances. She's driving hard to the lane and absorbing contact from defenders. Over the course of a long professional career, this kind of high-intensity play can accumulate wear and tear on joints and muscles. The knees especially absorb a tremendous amount of stress in basketball. Players who play the way Clark plays, with constant explosive movements and high-intensity effort, often deal with knee problems as they age. The question that medical professionals and team officials are likely asking is, can her body sustain this level of intensity for the next 10, 12, 15 years? Rumors online suggest that some in the basketball community are watching her knee recovery particularly carefully. Not because this specific injury is necessarily serious, but because it's a data point. It's the first documented injury at the professional level. If she has another injury next season, then a pattern starts to emerge. If injuries become a recurring issue, then there are legitimate durability concerns about her long-term health. If she stays healthy, then the durability concerns were overblown. Right now, we're in the middle of that story, and nobody knows how it ends. The team is being cautious about her recovery and integration back into full competition. They understand that protecting her long-term health is more important than any single game or season. But there's also pressure to have her on the court, because she's so transformational that her absence is felt immediately. What's also worth considering is the mental toll of being constantly pursued by opposing defenses and constantly in the spotlight. Clark is 22 years old and operating at a level of professional basketball where every mistake is analyzed. Every game is filmed. Every decision is scrutinized. The pressure to maintain excellence is immense. The pressure to live up to the hype that surrounds her is constant. Some players thrive under that pressure. Others eventually burn out. There's also the question of how her playing style might be affected if she has to modify her game due to injury or fatigue. What if she can't take the same hard drives to the basket? What if she can't explode into jump shots the same way? What if her range has to be shortened due to physical limitations? These are worst-case scenarios, but they're the kind of scenarios that happen to professional athletes with regularity. The controversy and injury concerns don't diminish what Clark has already accomplished. They simply add complexity to her story. She's not just a basketball player who plays well and nothing else happens. She's a human being navigating the demands of professional sports at the highest level, and that navigation includes managing intensity, managing injuries, managing expectations, and managing the psychological weight of being one of the most watched and discussed athletes in women's basketball right now. To understand why Caitlin Clark has captured the imagination of basketball fans in a way that few players do, you have to understand that it's not just one thing. It's not just her shooting. It's not just her playmaking. It's not just her confidence. It's not just her pressure performance. It's the combination of all these elements operating in perfect harmony, creating a player who fundamentally operates differently than everyone else on the court. The first thing that stands out is her control of tempo. This might sound like a small thing, something that casual fans don't really think about when they're watching a game. But it's actually one of the most important aspects of basketball at the highest level. Games have rhythm. Offenses need to move at the right speed to be effective. Too fast and you make mistakes. You rush into bad decisions. You put yourself in positions where you can be exploited defensively. Too slow and defenses settle into position. They get organized. They cut off your spacing. They funnel you into the areas where they want you to go. Clark has an almost supernatural ability to find the right tempo for whatever situation she's in. When her team needs to speed things up and create fast breaks, when they need to capitalize on transition opportunities and defensive confusion, she's pushing pace and creating fast break opportunities that younger, fresher players can convert. When they need to slow things down and execute their half-court offense, when the defense has settled and they need to execute more complex sets, she's controlling the ball and managing the clock. She's not forcing things that aren't there. What's remarkable is that this tempo control isn't something she consciously does every possession. She's not thinking through some complicated formula. It's more like a basketball instinct that's been developed over years of playing. She reads the game state instantly. She understands what her team needs in any given moment, and she adjusts her play accordingly. This is the mark of a truly elite basketball mind, not just someone who can make the athletic plays, but someone who understands the strategic layers of the game at a deeper level. Then there's her adaptability. Watch any opposing team's defensive game plan against her, and you'll notice that they're always trying to adjust. This week, they might try to press her full court and take away her space. Next week, they might try to give her space and force her teammates to beat them. The week after that, they might try a completely different approach, something nobody expected. And yet, no matter what the defense tries, Clark finds a way to be effective. That's not luck. That's not coincidence. That's a player who has such a complete skill set that she can attack whatever defensive adjustments are thrown at her. If defenders press up on her, she has the ball handling skills and athleticism to get past them. She can navigate pressure. If they give her space, she shoots from anywhere on the court. If they double team her, she has the vision to find open teammates. If they try to slow her down with physical defense, she has the composure to remain effective despite the contact. She doesn't panic. She doesn't force things. There's essentially no defensive strategy that completely negates her because she's mastered too many different ways to impact the game. What's also interesting is her basketball intelligence in terms of understanding spacing and positioning. She doesn't just shoot from deep. She understands how her shooting extends the defense and creates more space for everyone around her. She's not being selfish. She's being strategic. She doesn't just pass. She understands how to position herself to create optimal passing angles. When she's in the pick and roll, she's setting herself up so she can see the entire floor and make reads. She doesn't just drive. She understands how to attack the basket in ways that force defensive collapses that benefit her teammates. Every action she takes on the court seems to be part of a larger strategic understanding of how basketball works. There's also something psychological about how she plays that's difficult to describe but easy to see. Every time she touches the basketball, there's an electricity in the arena. Fans feel it. Teammates feel it. Opposing players definitely feel it. It's the sense that something special is about to happen. And because she delivers on that promise so frequently, the expectation becomes self-fulfilling. When she has the ball, people believe she's going to do something remarkable, and more often than not, she does. Reports from players who have faced her suggest that she's mentally tougher than most athletes at her age. She doesn't get discouraged. She doesn't get frustrated. She maintains perspective even when things aren't going her way. She bounces back from mistakes instantly. She doesn't dwell on missed shots or bad plays. She's always moving forward, always focused on the next possession, always believing that the next moment is an opportunity to impact the game. What really separates her from other talented players is the combination of all these elements without any glaring weaknesses. Most elite players have something they're not great at. They might be incredible shooters but mediocre defenders. They might be amazing playmakers but inconsistent scorers. They might be dominant in certain systems but struggle in others. Clark seems to have fewer of these weaknesses. She can do almost everything at a high level. And the things she does at the highest level, like shooting and creating for others, she does at a level that very few players in basketball history have achieved. But here's where things get really interesting, and honestly, more concerning than anything we've discussed so far. Because while Clark is performing at a level that transcends women's basketball, the organizational chaos surrounding her has become impossible to ignore. This isn't just about one player excelling anymore. This is about what happens when a franchise gets a generational talent and then seemingly does everything in their power to undermine her. The Indiana Fever's coaching decisions have become the subject of intense scrutiny, and for good reason. Multiple documented incidents have surfaced that paint a troubling picture of how the team is handling their most important asset. There's been a sideline physical interaction captured on camera earlier this season. There have been contradictory press conference statements from the head coach when asked about Clark's health and availability. There have been rotation decisions that analytics experts have openly questioned as detrimental to winning. But the moment that crystallized everything happened when Clark was benched immediately after hitting back-to-back three-pointers in a crucial game. She was playing well. She was in rhythm. She was hot. The team needed her on the floor. And then she was pulled. The head coach's explanation in the press conference didn't add up. When asked directly about why Clark was removed at that specific moment, the response was vague. It referenced typical substitution patterns as a defensible explanation for a decision made at a critical competitive moment. But everyone watching knew that wasn't the full story. Withholding a developing player from a competitive moment without clear explanation isn't a basketball decision. It's a statement. It's a message being sent. It's a power play. And the more you examine the pattern, the more intentional it starts to look. The technical foul incident that followed was the breaking point for many observers. Clark received a technical in a close game, a controversial call that she disputed with the officials. The head coach's response on the sideline wasn't measured or professional. There was screaming. There was a clipboard thrown to the ground. There was an explosive display of authority that left no doubt about the deteriorating relationship between coach and player. Then Clark was benched, and the message was unmistakable. The coach was exerting control. The coach was making a point. The coach was prioritizing her authority over winning the game with her best player on the floor. This is a fundamental breakdown in the coach-player relationship. It's unprofessional. It's counterproductive. It undermines the team's chance to win games. What makes this even more damaging is the timing. This is happening during a season where Clark hasn't committed to a contract extension. That's not a background detail. That's the organizational forcing function that makes every documented element time-sensitive. She could leave. She could decide that the Indiana Fever organization isn't the place where she wants to build her legacy. She could request a trade. She could sign with another team if the organization chooses to let her go in free agency. And given the documented pattern of coaching decisions and the contradiction between front office statements and actual team performance, that's not an unreasonable consideration for her. The roster construction is also coming under fire. The Indiana Fever had the opportunity to build around their franchise player. Instead, they constructed a team with zero interior defense. They have spacing issues. They have ball handling problems beyond Clark. The organization put together a mismatched roster and then hired a head coach who, according to documented analysis, didn't run a single solitary play specifically designed for their best player during an entire game against an expansion team. Not one offensive set, not one screen, not one designed action to free her up. Nothing. Just chaotic, unstructured offense that relied entirely on Clark creating something from nothing. That's not a basketball strategy. That's organizational failure. The front office violations documented this season add another layer to the dysfunction. There were WNBA warnings issued for reporting violations. There were league disciplinary actions in a single week. The organizational competence is being questioned at the highest levels. Kelly Crosskopf, the president of basketball operations, constructed this roster. The Simon family owns the team. The decisions made at the executive level have directly resulted in a situation where the greatest prospect the sport has ever seen is being actively undermined by coaching malpractice. Some observers are openly questioning whether this is incompetence or intentional. The level of dysfunction is difficult to explain any other way. When historians look back on women's basketball in this era, they're going to point to Caitlin Clark as a pivotal figure. Not just because of what she's accomplished on the court, but because of what she represents for the sport as a whole. She arrived at a moment when women's basketball was hungry for transcendent talent, and she's delivered in ways that have rippled far beyond box scores and highlight reels. The sport needed a global superstar, someone who could attract mainstream attention and demonstrate that women's basketball is capable of producing the same kind of excitement and excellence that men's basketball does. Clark has filled that role completely and exceeded expectations in every measurable way. The viewership numbers tell part of the story. Games featuring Clark are drawing significantly more viewers than typical women's basketball broadcasts. Her college games set viewership records that nobody thought would be broken. Her professional games are being watched by people who don't normally follow women's basketball. She's attracted a demographic that the WNBA has been trying to reach for years. Casual fans are tuning in specifically to see her play. They're bringing their families. They're talking about her games at work the next day. That's not something that happens for most athletes, regardless of sport or gender. That's a cultural phenomenon, but the impact goes deeper than just viewership numbers. She's changing conversations about what's possible in women's athletics. She's forcing broadcasters to give women's basketball more prominent time slots. Prime time slots that used to go exclusively to men's sports are now being shared with women's basketball games. Networks are investing in better production quality for women's games. Commentators are being assigned to women's broadcasts based on their popularity and expertise rather than being rotated through as a secondary assignment. She's inspiring young girls to believe they can play at the highest levels. Every young female basketball player watching Clark is learning what's possible. They're seeing that you can be dominant, you can be celebrated, you can be a superstar. She's showing the world that women's basketball is compelling, exciting, and worthy of the same level of attention and respect as men's basketball. Every time she hits a shot from 79 feet out or makes a no-look pass from the logo, she's making an argument for why women's sports matter. What's particularly interesting is the generational impact she's having. There's a cohort of young basketball players coming up right now who are watching Clark and seeing what's possible. They're learning that they can shoot from extreme ranges. They're learning that they can dominate at the highest level. They're learning that playing a high-intensity, aggressive style is not only acceptable, but celebrated. She's essentially raising the ceiling for what the next generation of women's basketball players will aspire to achieve. The players who will come up after her will try to do the things she's doing. They'll push the boundaries of what's considered possible. They'll expand the game even further. She's creating a legacy that extends beyond her individual accomplishments. The sponsorship and business implications are also worth considering. Companies are investing in Clark because she's marketable. She's compelling. She's media-friendly. She's transcendent. She photographs well. She plays an exciting brand of basketball. She has the kind of personality that translates well to endorsement deals. The investments in women's basketball broadcasting and apparel have increased partly because players like Clark have shown that there's genuine market interest in the sport. This creates more opportunities for future female athletes, which benefits everyone in the sport. As the market grows, more resources flow into women's basketball. Better coaching, better training facilities, better salary structures, better opportunities for young women to pursue basketball as a career. There's also a cultural significance to what she's doing that extends beyond basketball. In a time when there are constant debates about women in sports, about female athleticism, about whether women's sports deserve the same attention and resources as men's sports, Clark is providing a compelling answer through her play. She's showing that at the highest level of competition, women's basketball is thrilling, strategic, and entertaining. It's not a consolation prize. It's not a lesser version of men's basketball. It's its own form of excellence. She's fighting battles on the court that extend into broader societal conversations. But perhaps the most important part of her legacy is still being written. She's 22 years old. She's already accomplished more than most players do in entire careers. She's already changed the trajectory of women's basketball as a sport, but her best basketball is almost certainly still ahead of her. Imagine what she might accomplish over the next 10, 12, 15 years. Imagine how the game might evolve with her as a central figure. Imagine what records she might break, what games she might win, what moments she might create. Reports suggest that she's thinking bigger than just individual statistics. She wants to win championships. She wants to elevate her team. She wants to be part of changing the perception of women's basketball on a fundamental level. She wants her presence in the league to increase interest, increase investment, and increase opportunities for future generations of female athletes. But the organization surrounding her seems incapable or unwilling to support that vision. What makes this moment so bittersweet is that we're not imagining her future on a level playing field. The 79-foot buzzer beater will be remembered forever. The no-look passes will be replayed endlessly. The deep threes from impossible distances will be analyzed and celebrated for decades to come. But perhaps the tragedy of this moment is the question it raises about what could have been if the organization had been as excellent as the player. The 79 FT shot represents possibility. It represents a player arriving at exactly the moment the sport needed someone like her, transcendent, marketable, and undeniably great. But it also represents the beginning of an unresolved conflict between individual excellence and organizational dysfunction. Caitlin Clark's future isn't guaranteed to be in Indianapolis. Her contract situation is still uncertain. Her commitment to the franchise is still in question. And every documented incident, every questionable coaching decision, every press conference contradiction pushes her closer to reconsidering whether this is the organization she wants to build her legacy with. The 79 FT shot broke the internet because it was impossible. But the real story happening right now is what happens when impossible skill meets organizational incompetence. And that story is still being written.